Hello everybody. We have a new game with the black pieces against Fauzi Reborn. He's rated 1701. We broke the 1700 barrier, at least on our opponent's side. And we are faced with d4 and c4. We're going to play e6, taking control over one central square and developing one of our bishops. White plays knight c3, developing a minor piece, controlling some central squares. We are going to pin the knight by developing a minor piece and preparing castling at the same time. Pinning this knight prevents him from playing e4 because we would take the pawn. So he decides to break the pin immediately with bishop d2. It's a passive, relatively passive bishop move, and we can just continue by castling. Now our king is safe and we're ready to push our other pieces and maybe some central pawn pushes. So white develops a knight, standard developing move, controlling some squares in the center. He's still not threatening e4, as we could take the knight followed by the pawn. So we're going to play b6. This is in an attempt to get our light square bishop out, which would have trouble getting out on this diagonal. So white goes g3. This counteracts our bishop with his own. It's a weird move order to be playing g3 now, this late, but what are you going to do? Okay, so we're still going to put our bishop here, according to plan, developing a minor piece. He does the same thing. No big deal. So now we need to develop our knight and also control the center with either c5 or d5 pawn push. We don't want to put our knight to c6, that would block our bishop and our c pawn push. So let's control the center immediately now that it looks like it's time. Now let's play d5, put a pawn in the center. It's well supported 4 times. It also attacks his pawn, so he just castles. So we have the option of taking this pawn, since he didn't defend it. If we take this pawn, our bishop is loose in the corner. Does he have any good knight discoveries? Wherever he moves his knight, we'll just take his bishop with our bishop. So I'm going to take this pawn. It does release a little control over e4, but that is already controlled by our pieces. He does move the knight into the center with a discovery. So I'm going to take his bishop, which was because it was hanging for us. And now his king takes. But this pawn is hanging, right? You could also take this knight, and when he recaptures, you have this check. Although I don't think that's effective. Is there any reason not to take this pawn? He doesn't have any knight jumps. He has this knight jump, but then this knight hangs. Yeah, taking the pawn also threatens this knight, so I don't really see the problem with it. Let me go back 1 or 2 moves and just see something. Okay, yeah, the second he moved his knight, this was undefended, but I had to address the bishop, and now we can take the pawn. So we're up 2 pawns, so that's nice. We took his c pawn, and now we took his d pawn. So his center just disappeared. Those 2 pawns were, his entire center. Now trades will be good for us because we're up 2 clean pawns with a good pawn structure. So that's a winning endgame. We also have a queen in the center of the board hitting his knight. So he moves his knight. So what was the point of moving it here? He only moved it there to lose a pawn. So that was bad. Okay, so our queen's under attack. We should move it. I feel like where do we want to move it though? This looks like it'll get hit by a bunch of stuff, potentially. This move still runs into some stuff. This move runs into some stuff. This move doesn't really run into anything. It just takes away the square from the knight. But I guess I can go c5 and knight c6. I mean, this does walk into this again, but you know, let's just go back home. We won't give him any tempi. Nothing. I mean, if you go anywhere else, he can always hit the queen some way or another. In this variation, he doesn't. So he develops a rook and stares at the pawn, maybe to try to get one of his pawns back. But I think now is a good time to fix our structure completely by pushing c5 and then developing the knight. Alternatively, maybe you could just hang on to the pawn if you really want. But I don't want. I'm just going to go c5. I don't want to set up some type of a6, b5 pawn chain trying to hang on to the pawn. I'm up 2 pawns, not just 1. So, but now that I played c5, he can force me to give up maybe for the knight. If I go back, I mean, he can't actually force me because he can't play b4, but okay, so he jumps his knight in here. What does this threaten? A bishop trade and some knight infiltration possibly. Also my pawn. His knight's loose though here. It's a little odd. If I kick the knight, where does it go? If he takes my bishop intermezzo, I can. Well, I don't want to take his queen. What can I do? I mean, I could take his bishop. His knight's still hanging. And then wherever his knight moves, I guess his knight could then move in here. Okay. So I guess at any time he can take and try to jump his knight in here. Not that that's the end of the world or anything, but just looking at possibilities. So why don't we initiate the trade then? Because if he doesn't want to queen trade, he has to take with the knight. And the knight would block his d file, meaning he doesn't coordinate anymore until he moves it, which he might. Okay, so I'm still up 2 pawns. All I need to do is develop. Since he doesn't have the coordination square, I think now is the right time to kick the knight. And because of the move order we just went down, we now have the opportunity to play b5, creating the pawn chain I said I wasn't going to create, which might hold on to the pawn actually. So that's interesting because I was planning on giving it up, but I mean, if you can keep it and he's, you know, with the sequence, with gain of time on knight and stuff, I guess it's good. So he moves his knight back, and I feel like we could go here now instead of developing, solidifying, opening up more possibilities for the queen. So now he goes here, which attacks a different weak pawn, but that pawn's behind, so he's also attacking our knight, which we don't care about. We can develop our last knight defending this way. We could also get active with our queen, threatening stuff. If we get active with our queen and he takes our knight, that would ruin our structure. If we take his knight, we get the queen trade, but activate his rooks. We don't want that. We could pin the knight, which threatens to win the knight. That looks nice. And if he goes f3, then we can develop our knight, and I won't be blocking my queen. I'd rather get my queen in front so my knight doesn't block it. Although it does have, you know, a5 and other squares for activity. It doesn't need to use the d file. But this looks kind of strong. I'm threatening to win the knight right now just by taking. I'm up 2 pawns. I have this beautiful queenside mass 4-on-2, so that's terrible for him in an endgame. But that's where my 2 extra pawns are, so. And I mean, if I can get rooks on the d file, then like his only idea, I guess, is to somehow trade in a way that gets both of his rooks on the d file while mine are still sitting you know, on these dumb squares, not doing anything, and then he can infiltrate. But that's so unrealistic and made up. You know, I have knights covering the infiltration square. He's not anywhere closer to getting the d-file. So he plays f3 to cement the knight. That weakens some dark squares. And now we can develop, as mentioned, protecting some squares that he's targeting. We can take his knight at any time, I feel like, but we might as well put rooks on the d-file. I'm running a little low on time, but I think the position is good enough that I should be fine to convert. All I need to do is effectively put rooks on the d-file and trade everything. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm not going to mess around with pawns unless I have to, or there's a good reason. Okay, so he moves the knight that he supported to hit the queen. But now I can get the queen off the d-file and put a rook there. I could go try to stay super active, but it's unnecessary. It's super unnecessary, so I'm going to back up. If I had a lot of time, I'd look for like the best queen square, but in this case, what is this? Oh, did he switch the knight? Which knight did he just... Yeah, he switched which knight he put here, which is weird because it doesn't change what, like he's not threatening anything. So I'm just going to put a rook x-raying his queen now that the knight's not covering it. He moves the queen and defends the knight, which is fine. I'm going to take away this tension and probably just go here. And if he goes for checkmate, we can take his queen. So this is some type of, you know, it's not actually checkmate, but it looks enticing to some white players now that I move my knight away from the defense. But it comes with, how did I know? It comes with its own severe threats. Of course, there's no mate. First of all, you can play g6 perfectly fine. Second of all, but most important and third of all is tactically it's just loses. So that's why you cannot just play your own game and not pay attention to what your opponent is doing. That doesn't make any sense. If he doesn't ask himself, why did black go here? As soon as I make the move and say, what is the threat? Why did he go here? What's the idea? Phrase it however you want. But basically, I just made a move for a reason. What's the reason? If you don't even like care and you're just like, forget about it. I'm just gonna do my thing. That's crazy. You might as well. You're playing alone, basically. And this is not like it's kind of obvious. Even not if it wasn't the queen, it'd be the rook. I don't know. Like it's not that hard to spot. I feel like for a 1700 to just throw the game on like this when he was playing like okay. But whatever. Let's go through the game. And so we played a Nimzo Indian. It's a very solid sound opening. Relatively easy to understand without getting too computerish, which is a reason I like it. I'm now adding it to my repertoire. So we develop a piece towards the center. Then we control the center and development. And then we develop, and this controls the center by preventing e4. It also allows for king safety. And now, king safety. Can't go wrong with that. So here you have a lot of moves in the Nimzo Indian. You have ideas of d5. Some people play c5. Some people play d6. But we play b6 because I want to get my bishop out, my light square bishop. And this is a great diagonal if it has full vision. So I play b6, and this controls the extended center, but it's mostly for development. The real reason is for the bishop. He copies me, but usually when white wants to play g3, they do it, within the first 4 moves of the game, and they castle their king right away. Doing it this late, a little weird. I mean, I can even do things like take the knight. He'll take with the bishop. Then I can jump my knight into the center. If he doesn't want to give up the bishop, I mean, he doesn't have a choice. I can take it back if I want. And whatever he does there, I can play a move like f5. And it's just weird for him to have g3 and all this at this point in the game, but it's still a fine move. Okay, he just contests me. And now we strike in the center because we don't want to dilly-dally with, you know, weird pawn moves and then let him play d5 and e4 and start steamrolling us with his pawns. So we were controlling the e4 pawn advance with this knight pressure and with this bishop pressure. So now by playing d5, I mean, we're controlling it more than we need to, and we're also attacking this pawn. He castles, and this allows us to take free stuff. He jumps in the center, which made no sense because we win this central pawn. But let's say he did play what the computer's recommending. Queen a4, hitting the bishop, hitting the pawn. Our bishop is under attack. I imagine you can do c5, queen e7, bishop takes knight, a5, yeah, same thing. Guard the bishop with a pawn, a5, c5, bishop takes c3, queen e7. All the moves I said are the possible, but he didn't do that. He went here, which hangs the central pawn. But first, since my bishop's hanging, force move, and then free stuff. So all we did was center development, force moves, and free stuff so far. He's hitting our queen, so force move. And now center and development. Because you would like to not put your knight in front of your pawn if possible. This is a better scheme of development, and it's minus 1.6. He jumps his knight here, which is weird because I think we found the perfect sequence to take advantage of it. Oh no, I guess not, because I was calculating a6. But what did we say? We said if he intermezzoed the bishops, what would we do? Right? I said if you take the bishop, he's going to jump his knight here. So you take the knight. I think I just stopped there and looked somewhere else. But if you take the knight, which I don't even think I looked at, you're hitting his bishop. If he moves the bishop back, this pawn mass is insane. So what? Okay, so yeah, you could hit it immediately, no big deal. I took first, and regardless of how he takes, it's still completely losing, so all the sequences are completely lost for white. We hit this now, free stuff, free moves, we keep defending our pawn chain, this is all for free. He attacks it, and now you could trade, or you could try to increase the power of your position. We go for the increasing the power by putting our queen here and creating this pin. It creates threats, it develops a piece. And then we just develop and center. Force move. And now we develop a piece with threats. And now we improve a piece with threats. And we can put this knight here as a replacement, and we'll have improved these two knights from here, here to here, here, right? A clear improvement. Because it targets dark squares, which he's hanging lots of stuff. So it makes perfect sense. This was a perfect game by us. Nice, nice. 2 inaccuracies, but not ones that count or matter. And so yeah, it's a pretty solid game. So the Nimzo is pretty solid and sound. We got their pieces out, we castled as fast as possible. We want to fix the problem of our light bishop as fast as possible because you can tell that this diagonal's messed up in the Nimzo. Then we just control, like if you just look at this, we did all normal stuff. And then, I mean, he just hangs stuff. So it's kind of, we already won on move 10. So there's nothing else really to look at. It's just how to convert. But when you're up 2 pawns, just trade everything if you're not sure. Anyway, we'll be playing Nimzo Indian games. So you can look forward to that. I do recommend adding that to your repertoire. I've been playing the things like the Benko, but I don't recommend you add that until you're significantly higher, even above 2000. It's even tough for me, so anyway, give it a try. If Nimzo, that is. Good luck in your chess. Goodbye.